Hello, and thanks for joining me. It's Mr. Ripka reading Neruda during Corona. We have reached poem 72, LXXII. We have poem 73 and poem 74 left. So we are coming down to the end of this great work by Neruda. It seems that Neruda, as he's getting to the last three poems, starts throwing many questions out. We suddenly get six questions in one poem, which is rare. That's the first time that's happened. Then we get 5 in poem 73, and then we're back to 6 more in poem 74. So the last couple sessions we're going to have 6, 5, 6, so that's a good 12 and 5, 17 more questions for us to think about. He is, as we know, last episode, we had 10 questions having to do with social discrimination and really with Hitler and systemic racism. And they were powerful questions. Before that, we were dealing with words, questions about words and syllables and things like that. And now he is moving back to the imagery that he's been using before. So it's a kind of bookend in a way. He's bringing up imagery of rivers, oceans, seasons, plants with roots, light, air. He also likes to ask this question, it's philosophically called the one and the many. That is, how is there one thing called spring, and then it comes back again and again. So there are many springs, but we call it spring. And is it the same? Is it the same spring? Or so it's the same whatever. It's called the one and the many. Okay. So he likes to think about that. Similarities. Is something the same? Is it different? In order to sort of bring up what I'm talking about, I want to read a little bit of the introduction of this work that I've been doing a little bit here and there. And here it says, by the editor or translator, William O. Daly. He says, images of rivers, seas, and salt, and in other poems, clouds, lemons, violets, friends, enemies. All are substances or beings intertwined with our daily lives. So we see these every day, right? The trees, the rivers, seas, it's just everyday images, essentially, that we see. But he goes, yet, even as they entice us, that is the questions, entice us to seek a reasoned answer, their tangible limits shine outward to reverberate in the unknown. In that way, these questions invite us to move through our intuitive perceptions beyond rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling. That is a hard thing to do, but it is a virtuous thing to do, to get beyond rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling. That is essentially to reach a point of self-reliance and independence where you are thinking for yourself, and it's not a rehearsed pattern that you have inherited or even a rehearsed pattern that you've created, but every moment is a new intuitive embracing of the world. He continues to say, the Book of Questions fulfills, of course, a traditional role of all the best poetry. Perhaps, though, its greatest gift, this book we've been reading, is to assist us, the readers, in teaching ourselves, being self-taught, teaching ourselves. It assists us to teach ourselves. Part of that idea of getting beyond rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling is learning how to be a self-taught person. So we get this greatest gift, perhaps, is to assist us in teaching ourselves how to perceive and sense by focusing on the inner quest, going inward. He says, when we sit, or when we, quote unquote, run in place, to borrow a phrase from Rashi Charlotte Jokobek, with images, so when we sit or run in place with images and sounds, rather than flee farther into our rational mind, the imagination quietly reawakens to the possibilities of wonder and awe. In this state of mind, we may ask our own unanswerable questions and might come to find reflected in ourselves the world beyond mind. and sight. I bring that up because of first of all, it's just beautiful, and it's great to remind us that the power of a question and the power of these questions particularly, but also that he brought up the idea that he's using images of rivers and seas and salts and stuff like that, and of course we have these sort of images here. Let's get to the questions. It says, "Si todos los ríos son dulces, ¿de dónde saca sal el mar?" You heard that, el mar, the sea. All right. Now we'll get to the next one. "Cómo saben las estaciones que deben cambiar de camisa?" Now you have the estaciones, the seasons. So we had, of course, el mar, the sea. Before that, it was saca sal el mar, the salt. All right, so we had salt. And then, then we have the seasons, right? And now we have number 3, the third question. ¿Por qué tan lentas en invierno y tan palpitantes después? You heard invierno, that's winter. So we went from the sea and then to seasons, now to specifically the winter. And then it says, ¿Y cómo saben las raíces que deben subir a la luz? You heard light, but even more for what we've heard before. He speaks a lot about light and darkness, of course. But you also heard raíces, that is, of course, roots. So roots of plants. Y luego saludar al con tantas flores y colores. Oh, that's beautiful. Flores y colores. That's flowers and colors. Of course, he's into flowers, as we've talked before. Seeds, with the power inside the seed, and it mysteriously grows. He's into growth. Last one is, siempre es la misma primavera la que repite su papel. Primavera, the first green, aka spring. That's what that is, primavera, spring. So once again, we have all these wonderful images, right, that he's brought up before. It's almost like a bookend. So here's what he's saying. The first one about the rivers. He says, if all rivers are sweet, where does the sea get its salt? Lovely, lovely question. He has other questions, lovely questions about the sea. One of my favorites is poem, I think it was 21, "Where is the center of the sea? And why do waves never go there?" But he also has salt. He's brought up salt before, about the moon, if I remember. Well, that was flour, a sack of flour. I remember that, yes. But he's brought up the salt and rice before, that color. And here we get, if all rivers are sweet, where does the sea get its salt? The next question says, how do the seasons know that they must change their shirt? He's talked about seasons quite a bit here. I mean, all the way back to poem 2. In France, where does spring get so many leaves? Right? We have so many of these that you could just randomly pick one. You'll probably find a season. Of course, poem 11 has that great one that says, how old is November anyway? But that's not a season question. But it's a fun question. We'll pick one more here. We'll find one more to just kind of hang out and see what he has to say about the seasons. Let's see. Let's go to 25, 38 maybe. Cannot a kiss of spring also kill you? That was one of his questions. Here he says, how do the seasons, though, in poem 72, how do the seasons know they must change their shirt? The third question, why so slowly in winter? ¿Por qué tan lentas en invierno? And later with such rapid shudder. Y tan palpitantes después. And later with such palpitations. It must be related to the previous questions to understand that one. That is, how do the seasons know they must change their shirt? And then I think he's asking, why do they change their shirt so slowly, the season? What is it? Or it says seasons, why do they? But why do the seasons change their shirt so slowly in the winter, and then later with such a rapid palpitation, it's changing? He must be talking about the slow winter change from from I guess fall into winter. It's kind of this slow kind of change. But then when you get to spring, it does seem like bam, 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 bam. Before you know it, there are flowers. Things are just happening all over. Question 4 says, and how do the roots of all these flowers and plants that go bang, 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 the palpitations, how do the roots know that they must climb toward the light? Yeah, he's had a question about a root before, if I remember. Let's see. Why do trees, this is poem 3, why do trees hide the splendor of their roots? And here he's asking, and how do the roots know that they must climb toward the light? And then the next one says, and then greet the air with so many flowers and colors. So those two must go together. And how do the roots know that they must climb toward the light? And then greet the air with so many flowers and colors. How do they know? What is it? That's the mysterious part, right? How do bees know to do what they do? How do flowers know to do what they do? How do they survive the winter and come back every year? And they come back better and bigger. It's a perennial. These are the mysteries of being alive. And Neruda's, once again, I think, encouraging us to live the mystery. Don't rack your brain trying to solve it logically and rationally. No, just live it. Live the mystery. In this state of living the mystery, we may ask our own unanswerable questions and might come to find reflected in ourselves the world beyond mind and sight. So, beyond rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling. And perhaps if we're feeling perplexed by questions or sad, it might be due, who knows, right? It could be due to just a rehearsed pattern of thinking that we can't get out of and feeling. And that's where Neruda comes in to help break our rehearsed patterns. So let's get to the last question. He says, is it always the same spring who revives her role? He is wondering about this. Is it the same thing, right? So he began with rivers, rivers going into the sea, and then he moved into seasons. So I'm curious about the connection between the first question, the rivers, and then getting into the seasons. I almost wonder why not just start with the seasons questions, what the river thing had to do with this. Because the other 5 questions all have to do with seasons. So we have a river question and then season kind of question. But at any rate, the first one, we talked about rivers going into oceans, the sea, and then we talked about the seasons changing their shirts, right? We talked about that. And then we got the winter, the slow winter, and then the rapid, I guess, spring. And then the roots climbing to the light. Why? How do they know to do that? Saber, how to know, how to do. And then how do they know really to greet the air with so many flowers and colors? Where does this great mysterious knowledge come from? And you can see he's asking the questions, but he's not searching really for a rational answer. He's just asking the question to get the mind to break out of its rehearsed pattern of thinking and feeling. But he does ask that last question, is it always the same spring who revives her role? This is that one and the many question, the same and the different question. And I'm going to show a few more of these and then I'll wrap this up. Number 9, he asks, is the sun the same as yesterday's? Or is this fire different from that fire? So you can see his sort of wondering about things that happen daily. And is it the same thing, or is it changed somehow? We could ask ourselves that as human. Are we the same that we were yesterday? Or have we changed so much? And what is it that is it part of our identity that it stays constant throughout life, or does it not stay constant? These are wonderful questions that this guy Pablo, my man Pablo Neruda, helps us think about. He also asks another question that's similar to these in poem 24. He says, is 4 the same 4 for everybody? And are all 7s equal? So you have another one of that same and the 4. That's actually a really intense philosophical question. What happens to numbers when you're not using them? You know, you can't just go into, I think, a restaurant and say, hey, could I get a 3? You have to say, could I get 3 French fries or 3 something? So what is a number really? Does it exist? Is it only in our mind? So he's wondering about this. Is 4 the same 4 for everybody? Are all 7s equal? And then one more, and then I'm wrapping this up here, was poem 45. That's 39, 40, 45. Is the yellow of the forest the same as last year's? That seems very appropriate to our questions today. So you can see he's very much interested in this sort of what is similar. Is it similar? Is it the same thing? Or is it much different? And here are the questions all in order. If all rivers are sweet, where does the sea get its salt? How do the seasons know they must change their shirt? Why so slowly in winter and later with such a rapid shudder? And how do the roots know that they must climb toward the light and then greet the air with so many flowers and colors? Is it always the same spring who revives her role? Beautiful poems. Beautiful poems. Pablo Neruda, as I said at the beginning of the video, images of rivers, sea, and salt, all substances intertwined in our daily lives. But in this way, these questions invite us to move through our intuitive perceptions beyond rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling. Well, I hope that encourages you to sort of struggle with getting beyond the rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling and coming to an independent, individual process, a personal process, a personal truth and personal understanding. I really do hope that Pablo Neruda, he's helped me out a lot to quit being so worried about questions and then just enjoy the loveliness of questions. So I hope there's been a question or two in here that has struck you as, that's pretty curious, and got you for a second maybe, or even longer, out of that sort of rehearsed way of going through your day. I know they helped me do that. We have 2 more poems left, folks, 73 and 74. I look forward to seeing what questions Pablo Neruda has for us in these last 2 poems. These questions that will help us get out of our rehearsed patterns of thinking and feeling.